Thank you so much this morning for joining me on this topic that I really care very deeply. As some of you may know, in the last almost 1 year, I've been working very much on this topic around the overlooked and emerging forms of human trafficking, primarily the scamming compound with human trafficking in Southeast Asia. So today, I'm just really going to mainly focus on organized crime. So I'm not talking about individuals, like forced labor in domestic servitude, individual criminals. No, I'm talking about organized crime, the real big fish out there. And my slide may include a little bit of a triggering image, so I will warn you if you don't feel comfortable, close your eyes, and sorry for including those. And I'm going to talk about the scamming compound, but also beyond. And I'm going to also later have a breakout room so we can discuss more in depth. So in case you're not super familiar with scamming compound yet, what we are talking about here, the stories are very much like this. Victims telling us, we thought there's a good job in Cambodia. The recruiters told us it's a secretary job. It's something really nice. We can feed our family. The moment when I arrived, they took away my passport. They forced me to the compound. And when we say no, they start beating us. And the compound is fenced and guarded. That means we cannot go away. And when I say, no, I don't want to do this scam, they start selling me away to other companies, sometimes with a price of 20,000 US dollars, sometimes a bit cheaper, 10,000 US dollars, but yeah, we were sold several times. And some victims tried to call the local police. Then they got resold again. There was no help. So what we are talking here is really kind of two layers of a crime. In front of a screen, it's somebody who's being forced to conduct something they really don't want to do. It's a scam. It's going online and kind of trying to lure other victims. But the other side of the screen is foreign victims, very often from wealthier countries, Chinese, Americans, Europeans, losing their money to the scammers and conducted by those forced labor. And I'm even receiving lots of videos I'm talking about, videos of victims jumping over the compounds because they just cannot bear with the torture anymore, so they try to escape. Some of them succeed. I met one person, he broke his backbone because he jumped from the fourth floor. Some other people, of course, not that lucky, so that's lots of tragedies happening in those compounds. And we are seeing scripts like this that teach the scammers, the forced laborers, how to conduct scam. So it's detailed. You can see that they kind of start a conversation, they strike, they tell you day one what you should say, day two what you should build a deeper relationship. You should create a person, a really nice charisma, saying, for example, you are a widow, you are also in your middle-aged life, and you are trying to find a nice partner, you love your kids, you love your dog, you are like a really nice person, and you try to create a deep connection with somebody lonely on the other side of a screen. 7 days, 1 month, and you already cut. Cut means like you try to scan the money from the other side. You ask the person to invest in cryptocurrency, and the person may say, I don't want to invest, it's not something out of my comfort zone, but you say, do you love me? If you love me, invest. That's how you should do it. And how big is the crime? Of course, every life matters, but of course, when it comes to different scales, it helps us to understand how much resources we need to put in, are we talking about? So from victims to criminals in those compounds, because it's a mixture. In those compounds, there are victims and also criminals. Many of them are indeed victims, to varying from different degrees. And we can confidently say it's ranging around 10,000 to 100,000. How do we come out with those numbers? Just take a look. This is Sihanouk Vale. All these buildings, majority of them are indeed compounds. Many of them, we have rescued victims directly from those buildings, and that's the reason why we know. And the victim survivors will tell us, in the office, I have seen other victims as well. I'm lucky I get out, but other people are still stuck inside. In the same buildings, there are other floors. There are some floors in my dormitory, other floors are where we conduct scams, so that's the reason how we come out with a number. And this is only just Sihanouk Vale, which is one small area of the compound. the whole issues, for example, here, another place, this is Chinatown compound. Again, it's in the area of Sihanoukville. This area, we have rescued lots of victims, and they are sending us GPS, telling us which room numbers they are in, which floor. This is one of the largest known compounds in Cambodia. We also see, for example, this is Boca Mountain, and I think some of you know Boca Mountain is actually a holiday destination. It's beautiful forest, but we are also seeing victims out from here. 2 Taiwanese girls, I brought them out here. One almost lose her eyesight because she was beaten so terribly. And who are the victims? Majority of them are indeed Chinese. The criminals are mainly Chinese or Chinese-speaking nationals, including Taiwan, Malaysia. The victims, majority of them are indeed also Chinese and Chinese-speaking nationals. Because the history of this crime, initially, it was scamming, and then afterwards forced labor, and then they mainly scammed Chinese nationals until after COVID, they realized, it's very difficult to recruit Chinese because of the border control. How about let's recruit other foreigners and also try to target Western countries, scamming in English, in other languages. So now we see victims, of course, mainly from Asia. Almost all the Asian nationals you can find from here, but also beyond. Personally, I met 2 Americans from America, and yesterday we just sent one Ethiopian back to her hometown, like from Cambodia, all the way back to Ethiopia. So from everywhere, even from Central Asia. And we are talking about scamming compounds, but when I say scam, it really is a mixture of its own empire. So there will be people being forced to conduct scam, but also more. So when you scam somebody, you want to say, oh yeah, we are actually a beautiful lady, a beautiful guy, that's somebody you fall in love. So they need models. Models that can have like streamings or like video call with you and say, oh yeah, I'm the person who you are chatting with, which in reality is not. It's just basically very divided. Somebody's chatting with you, somebody's having video call with you to let you believe. So there are models being forced to have those video calls. There are people, of course, that's a criminal space. So you imagine also there's sex trafficking. And there are also security guards, because there are several different layers of a security guard. You may have security guards in your own floor, and also in the compound, the main gate, and several different layers. So some security guards, they are also not doing this voluntarily. Also, some people may act as agents. What do we mean by agents? The boss, the criminal boss, they need food, they need daily products, they need luxury goods. Who's going to buy that for them? The agents, sorting out their life, different areas, almost like a secretary. So I want to talk a little bit about how we bring victims out. It's extremely difficult because police don't react. And I know some of the partners here, you are also doing this a bit more than that. Police just don't react, unfortunately. And sometimes even the police station is just right next to the compound, and they know perfectly well what's happening, but unfortunately not happening. So in the end, it's very much depending on the goodwill of certain individual stakeholders, like kind of under their mercy. So for example, last year there was a period I was sending lots of, my team and I were sending lots of those cases to Sir Kin, one of the Cambodian leaders who was willing to support bringing victims out. So it's actually outside a little bit of his responsibilities, but he was willing to do so. And it's also not being seen as a duty, but sometimes more like a goodwill. That happens a lot, not just in Cambodia, but also in Myanmar and other places. A lot of the time, the reason why certain victims can get out and others cannot is because that victim reached out to Mr. A to Mr. B, B to C, C to D, and D finally connect to somebody who's powerful in those areas, who can say, okay, that's that person. go slightly more north to Tachalik, that's another area in Myanmar. Again, compounds and lots of African victims. It's even more remote, really difficult to conduct rescue, so lots of bad things happening there again. But even beyond those areas, KK and Tachalik, if we go a little bit deeper north, which is in the Wa State, so Wa State is a place that kind of within Shan State. And a little bit, very brief background about Myanmar is that it's very much divided into different ethnic groups. So different kind of warlords, they have their own control. And in the Wa State, it's very much Chinese-controlled area. So if you go there, you don't use local currency, you use Chinese yuan. That's the degree. You walk on the street, you see lots of signs are all in Chinese. And in the Wa State, like that's the kind of green area in the border of China. And you can see there are also different counties, Mongneng, Mongbo, and criminals are building major compounds there as well. Lots of construction. So for example, this building, very special architectural style with Chinese characters is one of the county mayor he's building, and this is basically a casino. So in Myanmar, we see lots of compounds, and it's almost really difficult to touch it. And if you search in English, you find nothing. I try to use Chinese, I find very little information. I don't know how much if you search in Myanmar language, how much you can find in Burmese, but the information is really scarce. For example, Sihanoukville, we can use lots of Google Map and you can see exactly where are the locations. But Myanmar is extremely difficult, just mountains and mountains. Shift a little bit to Laos. Like yesterday, we talked about Laos also having scamming compounds. So the Golden Triangle Special Economic Zone, it's another area that you can see on the picture. Lots of buildings, a beautiful casino, hotel, and it's a special economic zone that's controlled by Chinese again, and that guy right there, he's called Zhao Wei. Zhao Wei is the kind of the king or the boss in that special economic zone. So he's the head of the King's Roman group that they already have a 99 years of lease with the Laos government to own the area. So literally, it's their own kingdom. You can build whatever activities you like. And Zhao Wei, he sanctioned the global Magnitsky scheme, but of course, he's still operating. That's the reason why we see lots of troubles. Again, like just a few days ago, we are in the process of bringing somebody out from that area, Golden Triangle, and the person just basically described, yeah, like it's scam. Scam is basically legal in here. Maybe trafficking is or like a kind of a really heavy beating is a little bit less likely, but everybody's doing scam. And still, if you really behaving very naughty, you can still be like severely hurt. So all these compounds, we can see a structure across all of them. You see the local authorities on top that's okay with the criminal activity and receiving bribe. Then you see the compound owner who's like almost like a landlord. They are having a large area and providing the space. Then you see different companies like occupying different offices. Some company may be like, okay, we are focusing on Twitter to focus on scamming Americans. The other ones that we are using dating app on Europeans. So they have different styles, and they are like tenants, so they are paying the rent, they are paying the fees to their landlord, which is compound owners, like Zhao Wei. Zhao Wei is the compound owners, for example. And then afterwards, you have compound like company managers who will try to recruit their people. Some recruit more Vietnamese, some more Taiwanese, some more like Bangladeshi. And of course, they collaborate with source country trafficking groups because otherwise, how are you going to get somebody from Ethiopia all the way here? And of course, when you have lots of money, what you should do with them is you need to launder them. Otherwise, you cannot use them freely. So there's always money laundering service right next to those compounds and in their whole kind of activities. So let's look at the number, really scary. In 2022, just the reported number in the US, we understand that cybercrime cases cost over 800,000 with a loss amount of 10.3 billion. And that's only just in US, that's only just the reported one. How about those that's unknown and worldwide in Europe, in other places? And another also really scary one I found, China's unemployment rate at the moment, last month, June, between the age of 16 to 24 was 21.3. So that means 1 out of 5 people is unemployed. What does it mean? You are from a rural area, you are really poor, your family is suffering. What you should do, just stay hungry, or you go out, very likely being abused, or you join a criminal, you become an abuser. So those numbers, I think we can see a very clear picture and can see that the problem was still ongoing for a while. Let's just shift the kind of focus from Cambodia and Southeast Asia back to Taiwan. This is in Taiwan, last year in November. So people on the ground, they are not criminal, they are actually victims. They were found in one apartment in Taiwan, and the reason why the criminals were holding hostage of these victims is because they want to control this individual's bank account. They have their bank account, they sometimes bring those individuals in front of the bank to withdraw money, so to send money. So they need those people almost like a money laundering tools. Yes, this is for money laundering. So it's a money laundering service that's emerged because of the illicit money. And we don't know how many of those activities are still ongoing, and there's a huge amount of monies under the table at the moment in Asia. So how many other this kind of money laundering service may be already out there, but we don't know. We don't know. And sorry again for the image. So yeah, they call these people as forcefully controlled cars, 强控车, like controlling these. They call it cars. I mean, there's lots of coded messages. If you look at, for example, Telegrams or like Facebook, you can find lots of those informations. And also very concerning to see is lots of those criminals, they are extremely young as 15 years old, but they are ruthless. They are torturing people. And I mean, I guess this is a bit wider questions to understand what's happening to our society, but that's what's happening. And another kind of underlooked form of trafficking is organ trafficking. As I mentioned, for example, in KK compound, there was lots of rumors, and we don't know how much degree is true, but there's lots of talks about organ trafficking. Let's forget about the rumors, but look at the facts. And the fact is, in Taiwan, the last few months, there's several cases being prosecuted and even sentenced of organ trafficking. So the criminals were about to send the person for organ trafficking. They already sent a victim to, for example, Myanmar, to Cambodia. Luckily, the person was found last minute or reported to the police. But you can find the chat messages between the sellers and the buyers on what kind of organs they want, like how much money, on the day to send the person to Southeast Asia. So it's there, but we don't know how big it is. So if you look at those organized crime, you will see, of course, traditionally we are very, very familiar, drug trafficking that happens in, for example, Latin America and many other places. Drug trafficking is lucrative. That's what criminals want. They want money, always want money. Trafficking it's a crime that's about following the money. And then criminals realize, besides trafficking the drugs, how about also involving human beings, trafficking persons? So for example, in the UK, we have county lines. That means the youths are being moved between different counties and selling drugs. So that's the combination of drug trafficking and trafficking in persons. And now we see online scams. In the past, it's just criminals who willingly doing scam. But now it's like, okay, how about let's bring more people? So combine with tip. Then money laundering as well. Then blackmailing. So in the past, criminal group can just threaten somebody. But now, if you are in a compound, you want to leave. Okay, you want to leave, then give us more money. Or for example, you just basically bring people in and out, knowing even if they don't do scam for you, you can still get some money out of them. And we can also see a kind of a trend and involvement. So for example, in the past, there's, technology was not that good, internet is not that much, affordable, so we have call center scams, people using phone calls directly. There was also online gambling, which focused more on just gambling, but I still sometimes put online gambling under the category of scam because those gamblings are very much rigged most of the time. Then it evolved to online scam. Then from online scam, you see online scam with forced labor or with human trafficking, modern slavery in Southeast Asia. At the same time, I don't know if you see the news recently, in Japan there was lots of robbery and murder. Criminal groups just break into the elderly's door and try to get the money and precious jewelries from them. Several murders as well. And those cases were directed by criminals who are jailed in Philippines. Yes, they control them remotely. And those Japanese criminals, they were previously doing online scam. Then when they were jailed in Philippines, they realized, we do online scam, that means we have lots of personal data of Japanese citizens. Let's do a bit of robbery. So I want to make connection of those dots because we are in the trafficking world. That means we focus very much on the human trafficking. But what we are facing is actually wider than that. It's a whole criminal group, especially if you are talking about those organized ones. And it's impossible not to look at the money, not to look at the other crime and seeing the connections together because that's the only way to address them holistically. So if you look at the resources, it's honestly quite sad. Sorry about saying that, but you look at the criminals, they are mastering tech, they are utilizing the best technology. I have one victim, Taiwanese victim, telling me when he was in the compound, he didn't want to do scam, but he has like a coding, skills. So the criminals forced him, okay, you need to code something, improve our systems. And he did, because otherwise he would get bitten. And I'm also seeing criminals using deepfake. So deepfake is, for example, this is the face of Mina, but we swap the face to somebody else, and when I have the video call with you, it looks like somebody else. They are using deepfake for talking to their victims in the Western world. They are mastering tech, and there's even some talk nowadays about AIs, about metaverse. But then the law enforcement are so bad in tech most of the time. And then criminals are running internationally, and they are very good in using the loophole internationally. They move the money around, they move the people around, and suddenly you cannot catch them. Law enforcement bodies really struggle to work across the borders, and the collaborations are usually very limited so far. Criminals are fast and adaptive. They know, okay, now Sihanoukville is under media coverage, let's move all the way to Myanmar. Now Myanmar is at the war, let's move back again to Cambodia. Law enforcement are slow and bureaucratic. Criminals, they have a really strong incentive to act. They're earning millions and billions and happy. And law enforcement bodies, they're like, should I go and catch it? Low incentive. So if you look at that, we are really losing. It has to change, otherwise we are really losing. When I say law enforcement, of course, that's also wider, like the governments and sometimes, unfortunately, our sector as well, counter-trafficking sector, unfortunately. But then I want to still share some good news, not just like all very sad. So for example, here there are some news that in last year, lots of persecutions in Taiwan. By the end of last year, there was around 300 criminals being arrested and put into jail. I mean, that's not the ending, of course. So we understand there's a bigger reform to do, like sending people to jail. It's not just the final answer, but it has to create some accountability still. And also we can see, for example, in Singapore and in like really wide Asian countries in general, governments waking up, they are doing something, they are rescuing, they are prosecuting. So for example, here in Singapore, also just really recently, last 1 month, they have conducted one operation, prevented more than 3,900 victims from losing over 21 million through scams. So this is great, this is using technology. And we need more of those examples, we need more and more. And so I want to finalize with several key messages. The first key message is I promise in the content I will not just talk about problem, but a little bit about the solution. Of course, the solutions are very open for debate, and we need to all be very creative in thinking what we can do. The first message is, let's try to be bold in naming and recognizing the overlooked human trafficking trend. Because honestly, before we jump in last year, which is around July 2022, the issue was very, very quiet. Of course, there are some other people also working on it, and honestly, at least in Taiwan's context, you can see YouTube has talking about it, because the people who got trafficked, many of them are from more like marginalized family background. Their word is very different from like mainstream media. So they were like shouting out, but then nobody's taking it seriously. In Taiwan, you can see Ministry of Foreign Affairs saying, yeah, Taiwanese citizens are going to Southeast Asia, having job disputes, please be careful. That's it. They never call this as human trafficking. And I know it's also very similar in other Asian countries, even though it was happening already several months. So we need to be able to recognize and call this human trafficking. The moment when we call this human trafficking, we can get a different level of resources. And as we say, like there's money laundering happening. Do we also, maybe we have already also overlooked the many other things in front of us. So the example, like we were having a press conference and the members of parliament were saying, oh yeah, we are sorry. They say to me, to my team, we are sorry we have been receiving complaint cases like this for several months. But we never realized this is human trafficking. We just saw, some people maybe, they are irresponsible. They just have their own problems with their own employers. They own their money. That's the reason why they are not able to escape. They're not able to leave. So they never really connect the dots. But we are trained. We have the eyes to look at this as human trafficking, and we need to help other stakeholders to be able to recognize them. And of course, like when you speak to survivors and victims, so all these are very close friends who are like really help me and my team to understand a lot of what's happening. And some of the survivors are people who we conduct the rescues all together, because they are the one who actually know some context. So, and then the second message is that let's help the government to understand there's no shame in human trafficking happening. I mean, this sounds super basic, but it is really important. And even just a few weeks ago, like somebody was telling us that decades ago, New Zealand and Australia, they were also really uncomfortable with the idea of saying, being named that there are human trafficking happening in their land. Because it's weird. I mean, nobody wants to be, accused, and it feels like an attack very often, Even though it's not, of course, we all understand human trafficking happens anywhere. As long as there's human beings, they are human trafficking. But we really need to help government to see that, because, of course, we still see majority of the Asian countries rejecting that. They just don't want to admit. But we need to help the government to see that. And one positive case, again, sorry, I'm drawing lots of cases from Taiwan, but I hope it's okay, considering I'm also, maybe I guess, the only Taiwanese in here, so I'm sharing a bit about this. So I work a lot on the fishing industry as well. And a few days ago, we were having a meeting with the Ministry, Director General of Fisheries Agency. And we were just telling about one migrant workers case, actually Indonesian migrant worker. And the DG, he was saying, oh yeah, this case is too much. Maybe this is a human trafficking case. And honestly, I was feeling really happy and really touched, because in the past, fisheries agency, they never say there's human trafficking. They always say, oh no, this is nothing, just labor disputes. But now they are saying, oh, I think this is human trafficking. You should escalate it. I'm really happy to hear that. The third message, we need to create incentives for governments to respond, to prosecute traffickers. Again, it sounds super simple, but I mean, we are sitting here because we care. We care about basic human dignity. We care about human rights and labor rights. We believe every human being deserve, to live in a kind of a well-being and with a good life. But the problem is that largely just doesn't communicate to other stakeholders. You really have to help them to find instrumental values of persecuting traffickers, unfortunately. So, for example, it could be like arresting human traffickers may lead to seizing their assets. So it's not just about justice, not just about criminal justice. It can be also about money, actually, for the government. It can be another income stream. Or content trafficking may lead to them being seen as heroes to to their citizens. Again, I know those thoughts are really uncomfortable and I don't like that. If we can find other incentive, that would be great. But then the important thing is, it's not just possible to tell them this is your job and this is justice, we need to human rights. They just don't listen. And so for example, these are some examples. Romanian authorities seizing 4 million of assets in one criminal. That's another US Marshal Service, which is about like assets forfeited from criminals. And so yeah, those examples, maybe we can help government to realize, don't just say because the compounds should operate because your citizens need jobs there, but think about, can we steer things into more positive and like how it should be? Or this is Maslow's hierarchies of needs. I mean, most of the dictators and most of the government, they really want to be loved and be seen as, kind of important people. Then how about helping them to find a link? Counter trafficking is good for you. It's not just saying there are problems in your society, but that's good for you to say we are persecuting criminals. The fourth message, final one, we need to create wider accountabilities for institutions that benefit from trafficking persons. What do I mean? There's a case. This girl, very brave, Lisa. So she's the first person that sued the motel that she was abusing. So the motel did nothing, but she was in that space and the trafficker was abusing her, but the motel allows it to happen. The staff sees that, but didn't do anything. So she sued the hotel for the first time, and afterwards there were lots of cases that victims not just sue their trafficker, but sue other people who sees it but didn't do anything. So right now we are very much accepting the fact that police are just corrupted. What can we do? Nothing. Can we sue the police for doing nothing? They already know the information, they choose to do nothing. How about other institutions? Can we bring wider accountabilities to all these people all together? So yeah, I think I'm going to stop my presentation here. So this is me. I didn't talk that much about myself, but I'm the founder and director of Humanity Research Consultancy, and you can find me on LinkedIn or Twitter. I don't use Twitter that much, but I do occasionally share some information, particularly about the compound. And later, I will also be speaking in a breakout session, talking a bit more deeper with the criminal techniques. Yeah, so thank you. And then, for example, including some Telegram chats that we are seeing from the criminals. And I will not repeat the things I say here, but I will just be deepening what we are discussing here. Thank you so much, everybody.
All right, do we have anybody with a burning question?
Anyone can translate? Prima, please. Yeah, I'm sorry. I am Wiwin Warsiating from Association of Indonesian Migrant Worker in Indonesia. We are based for migrant worker and family. Kak Prima, can you please translate for me? I will speak bahasa because my English is not really good. Is it okay? Apa kamu? Okay. She will help me because she speak bahasa very well. Come. So this is my bestie. Okay. Terima kasih, Miss Lin. I'm really happy to see you here. Terima kasih karena we are so many. Sorry, I forgot. Sorry, I will speak bahasa. No, it's okay. I will confirm my bahasa. You will explain like that. Jadi kami fokus di perlindungan keluarga migran dan keluarganya. Banyak sekali kasus-kasus seperti yang dijelaskan oleh Miss Mina. Karena kami juga mendampingin kasus di mana perbudakan atau ABK dari tahun 2011 yang banyak eksploitasi, human trafficking,
Yeah.
Try.
Yeah, so her organization, Kabar Bumi, has received a lot of cases, like you've explained. Yeah, from cyber scamming cases, also getting contacts from families of these things since
Ya,
2019.
banyak kasus ABK selain eksploitasi, tidak diberi jam kerja yang panjang, ketika meninggal dibuang saja di laut dan tidak mendapatkan akomodasi, bahkan meninggal pun pemerintah Indonesia, I'm sorry to say, kalau di sini ada pemerintah Indonesia, karena memang perlindungan terhadap ABK atau pekerja kapal itu belum ada, walaupun sudah ada undang-undang.
Sangat lama sih. Okay, akan coba. Yeah, so they have a lot of cases where Indonesians are promised jobs, they're left out to sea, they're left to work these long jobs, and maaf, sorry to the government of Indonesia, they just kind of leave them, they don't respond to these cases of trafficking, of labor trafficking abroad.
Jadi let me try to be English. Okay. We also have the cases Indonesian just last year during pandemic. We handling like 20 and more. They are giving a job to Europe, but they sending to Cambodia and Myanmar. Just the last, I think the last month we also handling that the same the exploitation you said that, and the government said they just bring up like Indonesian like 800 people because they got exploitation in Cambodia and also Myanmar during pandemic, and also not in Cambodia but in Malaysia and Taiwan. Like I think last week we are handling referring cases from Mentari Indonesia. They will exploitation human trafficking to Middle East, but we can help them. So banyak sekali kasus-kasus yang kita dampingin selain human trafficking.
Yeah. So they take care of a lot of cases outside of even human trafficking. A lot of these like forced labor cases outside of trafficking.
Dan salah satunya adalah perempuan pekerja migran yang terjebak dalam kasus TPP human trafficking, terjebak dalam sindikat narkoba.
Okay, so there's also a lot of cases of women Indonesian domestic workers.
Filipino migrant workers.
Filipino migrant workers that are trafficking victims, but they're also being forced into the narcotics kind of criminality gang as well.
Mary Jane ini perempuan migran dari Filipina yang seharusnya dieksekusi pada tahun 2015, namun walaupun yang melakukan trafficking sudah ditangkap di Filipina dan dipenjara seumur hidup, itu namun Mary Jane itu nasibnya belum tahu di Indonesia. Can you explain?
I think so. We're gonna try my best. So there like this case with the Filipino woman. She was already arrested in 2015. But because it was a criminal, she did a crime, forced criminality, she received life in prison.
Yeah, life in prison
in the Philippines.
Now still we don't know. Anytime they can execution because of drug trafficker. She is the victim of human trafficking, but we don't know when the time where he will be execution. Because in Indonesia this case is really strict, and some people they are approved for the death penalty, some people they are no death penalty. So our organization we try to abolish death penalty. So that's why this is really human trafficking can be
bersama ya.
No, I mean human trafficking bisa terjadi siapapun. Jadi di sini kita harus bekerja sama, saling membantu untuk sama-sama untuk ini.
Yeah, so human trafficking can really happen to anyone, and so we have to, this room has to be willing to help whoever and work together to end this.
So if you want to asking more, you just can direct to me. I'm former migrant worker. I have been before exploitation also in Middle East and also in Hong Kong. So I know I'm appreciate I'm here to Dak Bali and everyone of you. I'm really appreciate, but please don't talk about migrant, don't talk about slavery without the people, without survivor. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Your English is fine.
No, thank you.
Your English is fine.
Thank you.
Other questions? Way back there.
Thank you, Mina. Thank you for your comprehensive
Thank you.
presentation, especially for your analyzing. Can you move back to the comparison between criminal and responding or something like that?
Yeah?
Sorry,
I think-
sorry.
I
Just
think
only the
it's,
comparison that here.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Yes, it's much important for everyone here in this room and also that outside this room as well, listening to our meeting. I think one of the practical implementation is that here, right now, before my question, I just share what we are practicing in Cambodia for surviving of those victims or suspect victims. Because actually when they come to seek our services, it means that they are already the people who are involved with trafficking, correct? But later on, after the processing here, for example, bureaucratic, it takes so much time for police, much time for other people around that to identify. So that this is which team or not which team they will be die. So this is very important for everyone working on this social service support or another first aid. It is important for our organization as well. Practically, we used to face with our law as well, because that our service support to only the victim. But after the long process of identification from the police, they found that not the victim, they are only the perpetrator or suspected perpetrators. That is later on, after the long process from our support, this perpetrator become the victim again. So this is very complicated, right?
Exactly.
So for this point, I just draw attention for everyone here. What we had to prioritize for our first support is that their treatment in emergency, even they are the victim, even they are the suspected victim, or they are not the suspect or victim, but the part of trafficking process. This is just only my experience sharing. My question, for this you analyzing here, this is very helpful, but how can we translate and how can we make another further action to all those relevant stakeholders to adapt, to understand, to make another national action plan or from another plan to solve this problem together? Because very important point, 4 points, but if you translate to be action plan, is the part of the huge contribution to stop human trafficking.
Thank
Okay,
you. Thank you for the question. And also for the comment. I think it's very true because practically we did see, for example, some people join the compound voluntarily, knowing that they're going to become scammer, but then afterwards realize they're not able to go away and they become basically forced to be in that situation, or vice versa. Some people who join it voluntarily, but then realize there's no hope for me to leave. Let's become a criminal, become a, really just try to go up with my hierarchy. So it is like a very kind of fluid indeed. Sometimes you may see, unfortunately, people crossing different kind of categories. And for this slide, thank you also for bringing it up. I would say, I also don't have one perfect solution, but I believe, there are lots of really great minds here. We can collectively recognize the issue and try to find out what is suitable things to do in our own areas. And one thing, at least my personal experience, last year I started talking about scamming compound, but there was a period I got really tired, like when media come and wanting to have interviews or like expose these, I just feel like really a bit hopeless. I feel like, why is only media coming to me, not other like police officers and other people, only media. But then I get a little bit like rejecting them. But then afterwards I realized it's really important for us to talk about it, because you see COVID, when COVID comes out, then all the urgent actions, and actually now in the Asian governments, you can also see many of them are taking swift actions. So when the problem is there, big enough, and everyone cares, they will act. it's one very normal, logic. And recognizing these are the issues, we all have the opportunities to fulfill those gaps. Thank you so much for the question. Next one, I only know we have 3 minutes. Yeah.
Sorry, we actually have an online question that popped up first, so we're going to go with that for our last question.
For Chinook Vile in Cambodia issues, did all the cases report for help from the police? What were the responded from the police side? Is there any support from NGO side also?
Yeah, so the complaints that many come from all different directions, can be victims themselves, reach out to other survivors, and other survivors told us, can be their families trying to talk to police and then get no response and come to other NGOs like GASO, or for example to us like consultancy, HRC. So it's really like there's no one directional way. And there are also several cases actually we received that's from Taiwanese police. Taiwanese police were referring case to us and asking us if we can help to bring the victims out. So it depends, because as I say, the rescue method, it's very much patronage way. So it depends if you have that special connection that happens to bring person out. So maybe this month we have a better connection, next month that person doesn't work, so it comes back to, so it's very much, honestly, a bit messy and chaotic, but it's not a lot of, police in terms of other foreign police, yes, but Cambodian police, this almost never happened that they successfully bring persons out, in our experience,
Thank you so much, Mina. Join me in appreciating this fabulous presentation.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.